guys? So we're back with another video, and we're just getting ready to start the process of doing the lowering springs. If you watched the previous video I just uploaded, they are GodSpeed Traction S. I'm looking at about 1.5 inches drop the whole way around the vehicle. So I'm gonna pause the video, get it jacked up, put it on jack stands. I am gonna start in the rear and then work my way to the front. Anticipating that I'm gonna have more of an issue with the front than I will with the rear, just based off of all the other components up front. So I'm gonna pause this and I'll pick it back up once I get a tire pulled off. Like I said in the previous upload, I am going to just do wherever I pick the video up. If I'm on the driver's side, I'll do a video of the spring install on the driver's side rear, and then I'll do another one on the driver's side front, because it's going to be exactly the same on the passenger side. So any issues or things I run into that may make your life a little easier if you're doing the same thing, or tips that could help you out, I will definitely make sure to put those in. And like always, I will put a link to the exact part that I purchased in the video description. So all you gotta do is click on it, go to the link, and you can buy it. I think they were $126 and it was free shipping, so it wasn't too bad. It maybe like 5-6 days for them to get here. So I'm gonna pause it and get started. All right guys, so we're back. We got the car jacked up on jack stands and already got one side done. It did take a little longer than I thought it was going to, for the simple fact that I had the jack stands placed kind of dumb, so it didn't allow the car or the rear to actually drop to get the tension off the springs. But as far as tools for the back, you will need an 18mm socket, and if you have access to it, a breaker bar. That'll make your life a lot easier. You will undo the bolt that holds your shock in place. The nut is actually welded onto. So I mean that's a plus. You don't have to fight against yourself when you're doing it. A tip: undo both shock bolts, and then where I positioned my jack stands originally, I positioned them right here. So if you're looking under the car, it would have been behind here. I since moved them to the front, which allowed the back to drop down more. You'll still have to work a little to get the spring out, but it's nothing ridiculously crazy. You're not gonna have to pry it out or anything. Once you get it out, the top part, the bushing will actually come off with the original spring. Once you're setting that back up, you'll have to keep checking both sides to make sure that that rubber shock bumper actually just lines up with the factory, and they just slip in with one another. So I'm gonna pause this again, yank the other spring out, put the new spring in, and then I'll pick it back up once I get these set back into position, and let you know if there were any other hiccups in the road, or if I came across any other tips that might be able to help you or cut down on time doing it. Alright, quick before I finish throwing the rest of the rear back together, I just wanted to show you another trick that I do, or maybe a tip for you. I have a lithium grease that I'll take, and I'll just put come on the whatever bolt I pull out. I even do it with my lug nuts. Just makes it a little smoother. So, and then if I have to get it back off, I think it just protects the threads. In all honesty, just makes it a little smoother. So I'll literally do pretty much like the whole bolt, with the exception of like a half inch. Just one of the things I've always done, so I figured I'd just pass that along to you. You can use it if you want, or choose not to. But even with the lug nuts, it's always worked for me. It's always made them a little easier to get off, or a little smoother. Come off, I guess I should say. So, all right, I'll pick this back up once I get started on the front, and well, I'll pick it back up once I get the rear back together and the wheels back on, so you can see what for drop I got in the rear. Start up the video again before I finalize putting together the rear, and I took the opportunity just to paint my calipers red. With this having an electronic e-brake, I did cover the back portion of that. Also covered the back rubber flanges. I don't want to get paint on them, so that my e-brake's sticking whenever I disengage it. I did do both sides. I'm gonna do sorry, the front as well. Obviously, it would make sense. So I'm gonna let them dry a little bit, and then throw the wheels back on. And in the meantime, I'm debating on whether or not I'm gonna use my 5mm spacers or not. Because in the front, if I crank the wheel really hard, sometimes I'll get like a rub sound. But once I pull the tire off, I'll have a better idea of whether or not I'm actually going to go that route. And by putting the spacers on, plus I got to make sure that with the spacer there, I'll have enough of my hub-centric bore, or the bore of the rim actually, on the rotor. So, but as for now, I'm going to pause the video, and I will pick it back up once I get the back all back together to show you the what it looks like so far lowered in the rear, and then I'll start the front. Alright, so we got the front assembly off on the driver's side. From where we left off, using the vice grips, once you get that done, my suggestion to you would be to leave your 3 bolts in at the top for your shock, and then you're going to want to get like a dead blow hammer, or in this case I ended up using a 14-ounce hammer, and you're basically just going to have to keep striking here. Now, I did notch it originally where it was before I even hit it with the hammer at all. You're going to have to keep notching away. Once you get down to a point where you can't stick your middle finger up, you're all but at the end. So then the next thing I had to do was I had to take my spare jack and my breaker bar to get the tension off of the shock, because as you're pushing this down, the shock is going to extend as well. So now where we're at is I got to take the top part of the shock off. So up front, it's an 18mm for your bolts, like I said in the past part of the video, and then these bolts here for your shock are a 13mm. So once I get this apart, I will pick the video back up. We got the top part off. The bolt for the top part of the shock is going to be a 13/16. I guess Volkswagen decided to switch it up on us and switch from metric to standard. So once that's off, the top part will actually pull off. In there you have a shock stopper or a shock thump, and then the rest of your spring wheel. come off. After dealing with that episode, which I dealt with that thing, it can go fuck itself. Because it was a pain in the ass. But now that I know what I'm in store for on the driver's side or passenger side, it won't be too much of a pain in the ass, basically. So we'll get this one all out, and they do have rubber that actually formed to fit just like that. So I guess it makes it easier to put your spring on. And helps you get the spring to seat. Sorry for moving my camera all around. Yeah. It'll help the spring seat better into place. And if you look on the back side, there's actually a spring stop. So basically, that is what you'll be looking at. So now I gotta drop this bump stop out, put that back on, and reassemble the shock. Also, if you're gonna I personally put the shock in a vise. You can go about doing it however you want. Sorry for moving the camera all around. I'm trying to piece this thing back together while I'm recording at the same time. So if you're gonna go that route, I would just like to remind you that the spring is still under stress. So keep a good, like I was doing it like this, like with my arm on it, and had a lot of force pushing down on it still while I was loosening that nut. Because once that nut comes off, it's gonna jump on you. I mean, nothing ridiculously crazy or anything, but if you're not paying attention to where you're at as far as thread wise on the nut, it may catch you off guard. So I'm gonna put this back together so I'm not moving the camera all around, and then get this back in and drop this side and show you what this side looks like with a 1.5 inch drop. And then I'll start the other side, but that's probably where I'll pause the video and then just do a walk around once it's all done. All right, real quick before I forget, when you're putting this back on, you're only going to be able to tighten this bolt so much, so you're going to have to go to an open face wrench, which will still be a 13/16, and then you're going to need an Allen head, which will be a H7. So you'll have to put that in there and put your socket on it, and then position your wrench just to get a hold of it enough. Now once you get down so far, your wrench will start slipping off. Once that happens, you can go back to your 13/16 socket, and what you'll have to do is, like, I just put my shoulder into it and gave it a couple good more cranks to make sure it was solid. So once again, I'll pick the video back up once this side's all back together, and if I run into any more issues, I'll give you tips or tricks on how to get that done. So we got all the springs done and all the wheels back on and the calipers painted. And the front definitely are, they're challenging. You're gonna, if you have a spare jack, that'll definitely come in handy, because you're gonna have to compress that spring, like I said in the last part of the video. As far as, sorry, I had to grab my light. As far as overall lowering, it definitely did drop it about 1.5 inches the whole way around. Definitely is looks a lot better, and the caliber's painted. Definitely does not have this super high ride height anymore that it used to. I don't know that I'm really going to look at going any lower with it, for the simple fact that I really don't want to void out my warranty too much. The shocks go out, that's something I can do on my own. I really won't send it to a garage for the shocks going bad. I'll just replace them. They're pretty easy. I'll just do a walk around of it. So yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. It's definitely going to be a challenge. I shouldn't say that. I don't want to deter anybody from it. If you get the back done, if you can do the back, you'll be able to do the front. It's literally probably counting the 3 bolts up top for the shock. You're looking at maybe 8 bolts, and that's undoing the 10mm bolt that holds the brake line into the area where the shock goes in. Once you go to assemble the spring and put everything back together, you'll have to put your 3 bolts in at the top for the spring, and that's where your second jack's going to come into play again to compress that spring to get it back up to where it should just slide over and fall back into place. Once you get it back in that channel, then you're going to want to take that jack again and put it under the A-arm and jack the A-arm up, and then behind the channel where the shock is going to go into is like a gap. You can put a screwdriver in the back of there and just kind of spread it apart, and as with the force of the jack pushing up and the spring wanting to come down, you'll see itself work its way back down. But before you separate anything, definitely mark where the shock is, where you're going to have it, so then you have an idea of where it ends up when it comes the whole way back down. So you don't want to stop short and not have enough of your shock in that actual channel. But like I say all the time, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will give you as much advice as I can and try and point you in the right direction. So always feel free to subscribe. Now I'm trying to think of what the next thing is I'm going to do to it is going to be. So might possibly be a tune. So we'll cross that bridge as we get there. But for right now, I think I'm just going to enjoy it being a little lower. Definitely trying to make it stand out and be its own vehicle without, looking like pretty much anybody else's Volkswagen that's trying to do something to it. So feel free to subscribe. If you have a question, ask. I'll get back to you in like 48 hours. Thanks for watching.